for Monday, June 26th. We've got a full quorum. We've got a reminder to turn your phone off or mute it. It's up to you. Pledge of Allegiance is going to be offered by our Vice Mayor, Richard Ortega, followed by the invocation. Would you stand with me and remain standing for both, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, Lord, we thank you for this day, Father, and we just are so grateful to live in a great city and in a free country, Father God, that's been protected by our veterans and is still being protected by our members that are serving today. Father, we thank you for all the staff and everyone present that's here and our entire community. Bless us and bless them and be with them. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Man, that's loud. Sorry, guys. Citizen comments on agenda items. I do have one, Mr. Tom Sanders. Would you like to take this up during the bingo application, or would you like to speak now?
I just don't want those out in case you had any questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That brings us to item 6, citizen comments on non-agenda items. B, none. Okay, moves us on to item 7. We're going to have a public hearing for the bingo application. Public hearing will be open for compliance of Arizona revised statutes and public hearing comments regarding the bingo application, which is item 7.1. B, you have anything on that one?
We're opening up the public hearing for the application submitted by the Foreign Angels Charity Incorporated. They're to have bingo at 1206 East Highway 70, and they're applying for Wednesdays and Thursdays from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. If there's any citizen comments.
Do you have any comments from the? Anybody eager to jump up there and talk? Okay, how about how about item 7.2B? Oh, you do? Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Sawyer, go ahead and come on up. I'm sorry, I didn't see you stand up there, my bad.
Up, so I wasn't have to here. I'm just say that I'm applying for this bingo application. They've been doing this in Tombstone since, I believe, 2020. And at one point, they did get their machine taken away, and they went to court, and the machines were given back to the business. So they've been in, I think, in Tombstone since 2020. So as people are questioning the bingos, so I just wanted to comment. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you. Any others?
Can we comment?
What's that?
Can we discuss as well, Mayor? Or
I think we're
let's
going to
wait
have time
yeah.
to discuss it, but absolutely, if you want to discuss, go ahead. Do you want to talk some?
Just a
about
point of clarification,
Yeah, I think-
bingo licenses can only be for 5 days, so this is a second bingo license for the 2 additional days.
Correct.
And you said Wednesday and Thursday, but they can do any day they want?
Yeah, so we approved on May 8th the bingo application for
For
Outreach
5.
Arizona at the same location for Copper Steer at
Right.
1206 East Highway 70. And so Foreign Angels is another charity that's applying for the 2 additional days
Okay,
of Wednesdays and Thursdays.
perfect, thanks.
Any others? Go ahead, Arnold.
So just
Councilman
what
Lopez?
exactly would be holding us back from this? What, has anything changed? Is there anything that
believe
we
we're go-
should be aware
I
of?
believe we're going to have a discussion. This is mainly for the public hearing, for comments from the
hearing, all right.
citizen, and then we're going to have that coming up by our attorney, city attorney, correct? Jim?
Okay.
And again, Bill could speak at this point if you would like.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, you may recall that at the last meeting, a gentleman got up and spoke at the beginning of the call to the public, and I don't know if it was the same gentleman who spoke tonight, because I can't see you and I can't tell by the voices. Was the person who spoke tonight, is his first name Tom?
No.
Tom spoke at the last meeting, Dennis Sawyer spoke this evening.
And Dennis Sawyer represents which license, application?
Foreign Angels Charity.
Okay. At the last meeting, Tom was very forthright when he said there are some gray areas, and there has been litigation, and in fact, it went to court. And the courts decided that the state didn't have the power to hold the equipment, had to return them. The state did not decide that in fact the gray area was that the uses are legal. I've been in conversations with the Department of Revenue, and there's a variety of requirements that have to be met. When the applicants send in this application, they have to sign an affidavit saying they're going to comply with all relevant law. If that's the case, you can approve. There are some technical issues, and if you as a council wish to discuss after we have these two hearings, we could go into E-session, and I could give you some advice if you wish to discuss. Otherwise, you will be, as B pointed out, this is simply an extension of 2 days for equipment you've already authorized. But it is a gray area, and I don't know if any of you would like to go into E-session. That's your call, not mine.
Bill, I would like to hear what they have. You know how much I hate E-session, but I'm very favorable of Mr. Sawyer with Foreign Angels. He's been doing this for numerous years, and Mr. Sawyer also owns I mean, it's not a reason for me to approve this because he's been a business owner in Safford for so long, but he's involved in so much within the city and within the Lions Club and everything else that he's involved in, that he's doing this for a good cause. So I would definitely entertain us going into E-session after the public hearing, if that's okay with the council. Go ahead,
Okay.
Vice Mayor.
I'd like to, this is Richard, Bill. I'd like to ask, when was the last time you heard anything from the state about bingo license?
I've actually been calling them nonstop, and the issue is we have two different agencies responsible. One, the Department of Revenue, and one, the Department of Gaming. To the extent these applications are simply to use electronic devices to aid in the filling out of bingo cards, that stays in the Department of Revenue, and they're perfectly fine. To the extent that the uses go beyond that, and then it becomes the jurisdiction of the Department of Gaming. And so, but right now, if you wish to proceed, and if we wish to rely on the applicant's affidavit, that they will comply with all relevant law, we can approve. But the extent, Mr. Vice Mayor, that you would like to, we could talk about whether or not, to what extent there is that gray area between the Department of Revenue and the Department of Gaming. We can talk about that in E-session.
That'd be fine.
Well,
Okay.
can we go into E-session if it hadn't been posted?
Yes, at the bottom of your, Mayor,
We have
Councilman
that, right.
Lopez, there's all items can be gone into E-session. There's at the bottom of your agenda, there's language to that effect. So if the mayor calls for a vote to go into E-session, any item on the agenda, you can go into E-session, but you have to come back out, reconvene if you want to discuss in the public forum and take action.
Okay, do we need a motion to go into E-session?
You do.
Let's finish, but we need to finish our public hearing first,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So, anything on item 7.1 for public hearing? If not, I'm gonna move on to item 7.2, for the public hearing. B, do you have anything different from item 7.1 versus 7.2?
No, but just for the record, I need to state that we are having a public hearing related to the bingo license that was submitted by the American Legion Chapter 32 Legion Riders that'll be located at 531 South 11th Avenue. They're also just submitting for 2 additional days, requesting for Mondays and Tuesdays from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. So that's the public hearing for 7.2.
Okay. So I'm opening that up to the public as well. Anybody want to speak on that? Go ahead and come on up to the, and then, I'm sorry, we're supposed to, I need your name and your address too, please, and so we can put that into the record, please.
I'm Robert Lane. I live here in Safford at 584 South 14th Avenue. I am part of the American Legion. I am the one also belonging to the ALR Chapter 32 that applied for these license. And I don't want to step on somebody's toes, but I did hear the county attorney make a statement, the Department of Revenue, or not, Department of Gaming, I'm sorry, excuse me, that they have something to do with bingo. Well, when I apply for affidavits and to have my bingo license renewed, okay, and when I applied to have my license gone from 2 days a week to 3 days a week to 5 days a week, the first time I applied, I sent all my paperwork to Department of Gaming, and Department of Gaming rejected my paperwork, saying that you have sent this to the wrong location. We are no longer involved in any sort of bingo. Okay? So the Department of Gaming really has kind of washed their hands of anything that bingo does in the state of Arizona. It's up to Department of Revenue, if I understand it right, sir. It's up to the Department of Revenue and the bingo department, bingo section up in Phoenix, Arizona, not the gaming department. Because gaming department is about what's going on in the casinos and so on and so forth, nothing to do with bingo. Now, the casinos and everything else have their own version of bingo, yes, and but their license is a Class C license, or a Class A license, excuse me. So it has, Department of Revenue is not gonna, or the Department of Gaming is not gonna get involved in a local bingo license. From what I have gathered from them, when I applied for my 5 days instead of just the 2 or 3 days, I sent it to to them. They sent it all back to me and said, no, it has to go straight to bingo. We do not deal with bingo, and we will not deal with bingo. And that was, pretty plain when I called them on the phone.
Okay.
So, thank you.
I appreciate
Thank you
it.
for hearing me out, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I'd like to respond, what he just said is exactly right. To the extent the applicants tonight can submit the required affidavit saying they will comply with all the laws associated with bingo, it has nothing to do with the Department of Gaming, it's solely the Department of Revenue, and you'll be making, we can talk about that in each session.
Perfect, thank you. Councilman Lopez?
No, if we're gonna talk about it in each session, I can wait till.
All right, this is my last call for public hearing on item 7.2. Okay, I'm gonna entertain a vote.
I move we go into each session.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Do I need a roll call vote? Dee?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All those in favor to go into E session?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have one opposed. Motion passes.
Yeah, leave your
We're gonna go ahead and reconvene into our regular, council meeting. Of course, the public hearing is closed, and that brings us to item 9.1, which is the bingo application. Bill, I'd like to hear from you on item 9.1, the bingo application.
Mayor and council, these are applications to extend, add 2 additional days for equipment you've already authorized. What we've been told, and the statutes require an affidavit indicating they'll comply with the state statutes regarding bingo. In reliance on that, you have the power to approve of these and send a recommendation to the Department of Revenue.
Okay, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve item 9.1.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor for item 9.1?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item 9.2, bingo application. Entertain a motion for
I
that
move
one.
that we approve Class B bingo license for the American Legion, Chapter 32.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Class B bingo license for the American Legion, Chapter 32. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you. That brings us to item 9.3, which is our minutes. B, that's you again.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Present to you to approve the minutes for the council meeting on June 12th, 2023.
Everybody have a chance to look at that?
I
Entertain a-
move we approve the minutes. Second.
We have a motion to approve the minutes, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Brings us to item 9.4, which is the airport toolcat purchase. Famous tractor.
Evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request from Mayor and Council to approve the purchase of a Bobcat UW56 utility work machine from Bingham Equipment out of Mesa, Arizona. Bingham Equipment Company has been approved by the state of Arizona, and this purchase will be under state contract number CTR 062323. Staff has found that the state contract price submitted by Bingham Equipment Company satisfies all the legal requirements of the bidding process. The City of Safford Fleet Division estimated and budgeted $95,000 in the fiscal year 23-24 budget for the purchase of this piece of equipment and its attachments. Attachments will be purchased from other vendors. Staff recommends that Mayor and Council authorize the City of Safford Fleet Division and the Safford Regional Airport to purchase one Bobcat UW56 utility work machine from Bingham Equipment Company for a total price of $74,109.96. It's time if you have any questions.
Cameron, is this only going to be used at the airport, or is this going to be used to clean up alleyways?
This is only going to be used at the airport.
Only at the airport? Coming out of the airport budget and all that, right? And all the implements that you want. It's already been accounted for and everything in the budget. Okay.
Yes.
All right, I entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the airport toolcat purchase.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion?
I just want to know, I'm not quite sure what CTR 062323 means. I think the 23 means this year, but I'm not sure.
Councilman Lopez, that's the state contract number that Bingham Equipment was issued by the state of Arizona to provide equipment. So it's their contract number.
It's your contract number. I gathered that, but I wasn't sure what all the letters meant.
Oh, I'm not sure either.
We'll find out. Okay, that's all, Mayor.
Okay. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll go ahead because that's kind of been my heartburn since then. Motion passes. Brings us to item 10, which is the finance report, P-card report. Everybody have a chance to look at the P-card report? Did you get everything, questions answered, Councilman Lopez?
I get the fiber to get to the library, it comes out, I guess it comes out twice because it was purchased there and then it's over $5,000, so I think it goes on both of them. We're not paying for it twice. We're not gonna get a refund. Okay, I think that's how you cleared me up one time. And then, the CTs, which are the current transformers that, for example, we're gonna be putting into the cabinet at Starbucks. Does that get paid for by Starbucks?
Nice.
Is it part of their installation?
So Mayor and Council, specifically those contracts, when they enter into the contract with the city, we'll purchase those and then there'll be a repayment from those businesses as they hook into the system.
Okay, and then, cause there's also Dorothy Stinson, and we're getting $800 for these devices, so wanted to make sure that was part of
Their
that,
hookup
'cause
fees. Yes, yes,
We
sir.
have about 3 of them, and one of them we're replacing one of the sides. Just making sure where that money's
Yep.
recouping the money.
It's being covered by them.
Okay. We had some purchases. Now, I always talk about the definitions on some of these purchases, and some of them are really good. Some of them still lag behind, like flags. Again, coming from the maintenance, the warehouse. The warehouse is not defining their purchases as well as they possibly could. I'm hoping it's getting down to people to help us do that. The better they're defined, the less questions I have about it. Because I still haven't received, from last time I asked about what the wire was. Haven't seen where that's coming from, and they're questions that any citizen that reads this could make out with the little bit of knowledge we have about materials management. We can still figure out where the monies went, and I'd just like to see a little better of that described that way.
So Councilman Lopez, you'd like, for instance, you'd list flags and you'd say slash, City Hall and, like wherever, like in other words, define it a little bit more. Okay.
Because I keep track of that in my mind, Mayor.
Yes, you do.
Like every summertime, we all don't need brand-new water jugs. They last longer than a year. And so, I hate to harp on every little single thing, but defining them better will make it better.
Yeah, point well taken, Councilman Lopez. Anything else on the P-card report?
That's all at this time, sir.
Okay, how about the expenses over 5,000? You kind of hit that one a little bit too, correct?
Yeah, the fiber optics showed up there
Okay.
again, which I'm told it gets purchased, and then it has to show up on that one because it's over 5,000. It's not getting charged to us double.
Okay.
And also, like, I made mention about the hats that we're wearing, because we just bought like $4,000 worth, which I like the hats. I like the brand new logos that are our little mountain and stuff. They're nice. But some of them hats, and the majority of them, since that's what we're wearing, should identify us as the city of Safford. So when we go into yards or we go into stuff, we have some identification to help the public let us know that it's us going into these yards. And the majority of the time, we just wear hats, and I think that would help identify us, especially in the winter when we got our coats on and stuff. I don't want to get to where we have to wear our tags hanging off our chest. That would be crazy, but,
Okay.
so, them's all my crying this time
Okay.
around.
How about revenues over 5,000 report? Anybody have anything on that? Okay, let's go on to item 11.1, which is ordinance 23-08, the fireworks code. Jamie?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a request for the Mayor and Council to have a second reading and approval of ordinance O23-008, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Graham County, Arizona, amending Title 9, Chapter 9.16, Weapons and Explosives, Section 9.16.020 Fireworks, to update the City of Safford Municipal Code to comply with Arizona Revised Statutes, Chapter 13, Article 1, Sections 36-1601 through 36-1610. There was a first read held on June 12th, 2023, and no changes were recommended. With that, I'll stand for questions.
I move we approve ordinance number 02-008, the fireworks code.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance, final on, 23-008 fireworks code. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask is, I know the state changed the rules, and are we just getting in line with them? Or do we have anything in here that makes our rules more restrictive than the state's?
Mayor, Councilor McGoy, we are not more restrictive than the state. We're just in line with state statute now.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Go ahead, Council.
And we're bringing this up to get our fireworks in order and clean house with it. We didn't do anything with the weapons.
Correct, Mayor and Councilman Lopez. This was just to bring our use of fireworks policy in compliance with state law.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. B, would you read that on in, please?
Approval of ordinance number 023-008, an ordinance of the City of Safford, Grant County, Arizona, amending Title IX, Chapter 9.16, Weapons and Explosives, Sections 9.16.020, Fireworks, to update the City of Safford Municipal Code to comply with the Arizona Revised Statutes, Chapter 13, Article 1, Sections 36-1601 through 36-1610.
Thank you. It's going to bring us to item 12.1, which is the contracts, agreements, and bids for the Sanchez Waterline renewal, the CIP LF 1706 Design Award. Gabe?
Thanks, Mayor and Council. This is a request for Mayor and Council to authorize the design agreement and enter into a contract for the environmental, cultural engineering of the Sanchez Waterline project with Westland Engineering and Environmental Services. A little bit of background, if you guys remember, this is the 7-mile project over on Sanchez Road. It goes between the Clontz Bluff Wells and the Sanchez Bridge. This was put in the 1940s. We have an existing 12-inch main in there. Last week we had a break in it that was kind of fortunate in an area that we can get in there and repair. No damage to it. Well, it wasn't caused by external damage. It was actually just a failure based on the pipe being old and aged. There's a lot of locations in that place that needs to be looked at for failures in the future, not so convenient locations. So this project right here will be, this is the engineering that we're proposing on doing. It's broken out into 3 different phases. There's a cultural requirement, an environmental, and biological evaluation. There's a lot of going on that road. There's 3 different water crossings. There's 2 BLM properties, and there's going to be a lot. There's two known sites for cultural surveys that we have to get in there and do some digging and density profiles for some of the indigenous that was in there at one time. We're proposing tonight to ask for the full funding that gets us through all 3 phases. The cost will be spread out over the next 2 years is what it's going to wind up taking for this engineering. The funding for this is actually coming from both the USDA rural grant that goes both to Lebanon, and whatever remains over will be used on the Sanchez Water. We're estimating right now about $2.9 million left over, so what we're requesting tonight will be funded through the USDA grant fund. So with that, staff recommends that the mayor and council approve the design agreement and enter into contract with Westland in the amount of $1.04 million, coming from mostly grant funding, excess grant funding. It's also recommended to allow the city manager or his designee authority to execute change orders not to exceed 10% of the contracted value, if in the best interest of the city to do so. With that, I'd stand for questions.
Well, I'll move we approve the Sanchez Waterline Renewal Design Award.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the Sanchez Waterline Renewal Design Award. And we have a second. Any discussion? All those,
Discussion.
you good? All those in favor?
I got.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go.
Now, you saying this design gets us through all of it?
This design will get us through all of the engineering up to the bid. So this is, if you guys remember in the CIP, so we'll be able to go to construction with this.
Up to the bid, because the total amount of forecast in the future is 9.7 million.
That's what we have for budgetary estimates right now.
This design is gonna supply that 9.7 million? It's gonna cover that too, most of that design?
As we get closer through the engineering, that's what we have for budgetary estimates at this point.
But this will be, like I said, the engineering side of it's gonna be over 2 years, and so as we get closer, we do have budgetary estimates of the 9.7. If we need to revise on this in the future based on their findings. Right now, we're expecting it to be a $9.7 million project.
And Mr. Bowman, you're looking for this line, it's a 12-inch line, is it going bigger now?
We are, so right now, if you looked at the CCF, we do have limitations within there. That pipe is actually rated for 1,250 gallons, so we can't take our full allotment from Bonita, and then also including the well pumps from Clance's wells. It actually, if we put 400 GPM, we're not getting the full 100 GPM. We're getting close to probably 200 because of the restrictions of the pipe size. So absolutely, we're looking at increasing that size so that it lasts us for the next 50 years plus.
And you're gonna be running this line by pumps to where we can blend into it?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and that's where we're also gonna be increasing our capability.
Yep, and our capacity, yep.
Okay, because I know that I've been taken out to some sites where that blending's very important, and we might be 100 yards away, but we can't achieve it because of certain factors like that.
Correct.
Now, this was done in the 40s, because my grandpa probably worked on that, so.
That's pretty
In fact,
neat.
he probably did a lot of, up in the Benite Canyon and stuff, so.
He worked hard because it was pretty intricate what they did, so even
Several
the place that
people.
they rolled it.
A lot of them come to mind, so anyway, the design will cover the majority of for the 9.7 million that it's gonna end up being, and we're on our way.
We're on our way.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
You're absolutely correct. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. You don't need to read that one, B, do you?
No.
Okay, announcement of current events.
Mayor, the only thing I have is for the 4th of July, I went ahead and I requested a pickup truck. We're all set to go.
Okay. Anybody else? Do you have a time you want them?
Maybe about 9:30 or so.
Okay. And you want them to meet where?
Behind the courthouse.
Behind the courthouse, okay. Just to let everybody know that I go into the hospital for probably a week plus surgeries and stuff, so I go in tomorrow. My surgery's on Wednesday, so I'll be under, and Vice Mayor, if something major happens. So. Anybody else have?
Take care of yourself, all right?
Yes, thank you. Anything else under announcement of current events? Brings us to item 14, request future agenda items.
Mayor, I
Yes,
have one.
please.
We're wanting to schedule a work session along with the Parks and Recs Committee. Right now, it's looking tentatively like July 31st, so some of you did respond to the email I sent out. I just want to make sure if it does work for everybody, that I can go ahead and move forward with scheduling a work session on the 31st.
I'll be gone.
Okay. Anybody else?
You on vacation?
Yeah, I'll
You
be
need
out on
help?
vacation.
You need help somebody carrying luggage for you out?
Yeah, come on.
Fine, good, I'm ready.
On the river at Park,
Okay.
join us.
I do have one for request of future agenda items. Mr. Costello, I'd like to get some information so we can up the purchasing agreements for the council. I feel like that's an extremely low number, and so I would like to bring that back on an agenda so that we can vote on upping that, and it might not fit with our current situation. We might have to wait until the following year, or if we can adopt it, you know, at that time. But I think after looking at it, I think that's a pretty small number.
I agree, Mayor, council, members of council, I agree, and, yeah, we should be able to bring that at any time and make a change.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Item 15, report on operational items. Gabe, you're back.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Working with Mr. Casella, he asked that we give an update on some of the CIP project. We picked out 5 different projects here that we feel that you guys would have the best interest in. If there's something else you guys want to see, feel free to ask at any time, and we'll give these periodically. So, if you guys remember, we kind of introduced this new nuance here. This actually has to do, if you remember, from the design to the bid to the construction, internal and external. So, this has been updated since the last time we met, May 8th, which is about a month and a half. So, some of the highlights, we'll see if we can zoom it in and help you guys out here. We've been able to pass off 2 different projects, one internal, one external. Lance and his team was able to complete the cemetery entrance out there. If you guys haven't got a chance to go see it, they did a really good job on it. And especially at night, they got some lights in there that makes it look really nice. So, the other one that we were able to achieve in an external project is a reclaimed water line. We just have a couple little minor things in there that the contractor needs to finish out, but for the majority of it, it's completed.
On that reclaimed water, are you talking that's the one that goes all the way out to the fairgrounds?
The fairgrounds, correct.
The pump houses aren't put in yet, or are they in?
So that's part of the reclaim pond ourselves internally. Right now, we're working on a contract which would be internal. Right now, we got a bid out for the turnout structure, which allows the water to go into the pond itself. Internally, we got some of the clays put down there. Once we get that up, we'll put the pump house in and it'll be active. Right now, it's not.
And so with that, we only have one pump pushing from here for the water to go all the way up there. We're gonna have stations, correct? Which one is it? Is it stations or is it just the one pump that's at the?
There'll be the one pump
just
that's
the
down
one
there.
pump,
so.
so push it uphill that far.
Yeah,
Good.
I think it's a composite of 3 different pump heads that are down there that winds up pushing it down.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was working with Morgan on that. We're trying to put together a game plan of what that looks like to assemble that with the Rainbird system. So, kind of keep continuing working back. We were able to put 3 projects external and also 3 projects internal from the bidding process up into the construction phase. A lot of these you guys have been aware of as we presented them to for requests for funding. Traffic signals on 20th has been improved and in construction. We got the taxiway signage improvements. We got the runway 1230, lighting and signage of the roll-off system for the public. This is the retention wall that goes out there so we can do a transfer station out at the landfill. We have the airport water tank installation. That's the first phase of that one that we got into construction phase. And then also the police facility renovation, which we just entered into with Danson. So as I said, 3 of those come from an external and 3 of those from internal. Looking at the design up to the bid phase, we're able to bring one and put it out into the external. That's the CBDG sidewalk project that we've been working on the design. That's in Siegel's hand now. It's going to an external bid package. We're also able to bring over a couple more internal projects. This is, to your point, Mayor, this is the turnout structure that we're putting down there at the pond. It's one of the phases that we need to do to finish that pond out. We've entered into contract and ordered parts for that one. We've also done the manhole rehabilitation. We've identified that. We're working on the bid package to take that out and put that into a 3-year contract. We'll take that to bid pretty soon. Some of the design, the one that we brought in here recently was the one that you just approved, was the Sanchez water line. We're doing the phase 1 right now is the cultural. Like I said, that's going to take about a year, and then we'll continue to do the different phases on that as we go along. Jumping into some of the project-specific stuff, this is 20th Avenue Road right here. You can see that it ranks number 4 on our external construction. We did have the budget in there, the $4.3 million, which is being granted and administered through ADOT. We're kind of in the late construction phases here. If you guys noticed that bottom right-hand corner picture there, the last phase of this is they're raising up some of the sewer manholes and the valve sets. We're scheduled right now for Wednesday morning. They have the last 5 that's in the relation intersection. They're planning on doing that early morning, 2, 3 in the morning for the limited traffic. At that point, Sholo's majority, they're going to be primarily done with that project. There was a stipulation within the ADOT that they needed 30 days post-pavement that they needed to do final striping. So that day set right now for July 6th. So there won't be a lot of activity just because it'll be completed out. As of July 6th, they'll be finished with that project. Along those same lines, we do have another contract that's on 20th Avenue, which was for the traffic signals. We've been working with the Maricopa. They graciously supplied the poles. You can see that they've actually been received and on site. We got AJP. They were supposed to be starting today. They weren't here, whatever issues they came up with. I haven't had a chance to talk to them, but they're starting relatively quick. So we're anticipating this week for them to have them on site. We're trying to look at this transition between the traffic control with Sholo leaving and AJP coming in and also not having traffic lights installed. We're trying to look at that transition and that plan to keep traffic kind of semi-controlled for both intersections there. So. For the majority of it, after July 6th, we don't anticipate a whole lot of major delays, or most of the majority of that road's gonna be opened up. Most of the internal part of it, it's just the 2 intersections that we're gonna try to keep limited down, just so these guys can work, and then also so we can control traffic through the intersection. The next project we wanted to talk about was the Discovery Park. This is one that's kind of ranked right now as number 1 on our design external. We do have, for this year's budget, the $2.4 million. I know you guys graciously added more money to that coming into the next year. So we're kind of in the early design phase of this one. We were able to complete a field survey with an aerial flight on June 8th. We've had at least 3 different public outreach opportunities that we've been working, obviously, with the council. We had an open forum for the public, and then we put a lot of the bulletin boards up in the library for the public to go ahead and weigh in on it. So kind of B's point, we're hoping to have a working session to kind of show you guys some of the options that we're looking at right now in July. Time frame kind of open right now. So.
And if I might, Mayor and Council, so the work session in July is predicated on several designs that the vendor has put together, different configurations. And so this is the opportunity really now finally for council to actually get in there and look at the design and provide us with input working with the committee. So again, the July 31st work session is a non-council meeting Monday. So, you know, that's really gonna be the focus of what we work on. And it really is the first point at which you get to provide significant input as to both the layout and the amenities that you wanna see in there. So July 31 is an important meeting, and it would be a joint work session with you and with the Parks and Rec Committee. So again, if you can attend, it's an important meeting.
I did go ahead and put some of the key dates and deliverable highlights in there. We're looking at kind of, like I said, we're kind of hoping to have that kind of rolled out, and then through February of next year before we have some of the engineering documents and ready for construction as of February 2024. So I did include in this bottom right-hand picture a really good picture of me, but Mr. Lopez jumped in front of me and got his picture instead. So
We let him in.
So this is a continuation of the Discovery Park. To kind of Mr. Casella's point, there is some options that they're kind of working with and dabbling. That left hand is a concept. I'll send you guys this presentation. It's probably a lot hard to read the way that we got it set up, but that's one of the options and the layouts that they're kind of working with right now. That middle one right there is, we've had quite a few of these boards that were set up to kind of give the public an opportunity to go in there and vote on what style that they like, some of the theming that they liked, some of the equipment, playground, splash pad stuff. That top right-hand corner kind of shows the breakdown. We kind of kept it color coordinated to kind of see the input of different likes based on variabilities, right? So you can see on that one up there, that's the splash pad distribution. You can definitely see that there's a difference between what the adults are thinking versus what the kids are thinking. So it was kind of neat to kind of see some of that fallout and some of the ideas and concepts. This bottom right-hand corner is a picture of the splash pad that was kind of most favored above all public input. So, and this is kind of what we'll be kind of reviewing, these bulletin boards, some of the findings in this working session that we'll get with you guys in July. This is the El Paso Park update. You can see that since we've moved up the CBDG, this is kind of ranked up to our number 1 on our design internal. We had some grading issues that we had to go back and change some of the layout. So if you guys look at that concept diagram on the right, or the picture on the right, we did have to change some of the layout to make some of the grading work. We're almost there. We're calling this late design, early construction. One of the big hurdles that we're kind of working with right now is being able to bring all the utilities into this park. We've worked on several different iterations to see if we can make it work. There's a lot of restrictions because there's a lot of utilities going through the main road there on 14th, and then also those El Paso natural gas lines. So we've come up with an alternative, and it took us about 20 different iterations to get to where we're at, and I think we can finally get it to work. So we're starting to do some of the field survey to get out there and start shooting to look at some of the calcs and the cut and fill calculations to see how much material we needed. We are going to start some of this rough grading probably next week, late next week. You'll start seeing some of the stuff going on out there. We're going to slowly kind of ramp up. We're removing some of the poles with Dan and his group We've gotten a lead on some of the fill material through Jamie, so we're going to start moving that over as well. So once we get all that fill in there and we get approval through El Paso Natural Gas, you'll start seeing quite a bit more activity over there. Another update that John asked me to put together was on the chamber roof. We did have a budget of $100,000 in there coming into this next year. This one is one that was kind of lower ranked, but based on some of the priority and feedback, we did move it up from the number 4 spot to the number 1 for a bid internal. We were in the bidding phase. Some of the highlights is we did have the cooperative agreement early on with Progressive in the amount of $89,000. And then based on some of your guys' requests from the mayor and city council, we did a rebid as a formal bid on that one. In November, and then come April, this is when we raised that priority based on trying to get it done in the monsoon season. We released that in May to the public, and then we just recently, last week, opened up the bids, and we didn't receive any bids. So now we're kind of back to working with Progressive to see if we can go back to the cooperative agreement to see if we could get them. Unfortunately, they didn't bid either. They had 2 major contracts with the schooling systems. They said they were about 9 to 12 months out, and that they'd be willing to kind of work us in once they got through this system. So right now, that's kind of what we're looking at for an option, is to get them in the 9 to 12 months, which puts us into the April, June of next year. Obviously, internally, we don't know what those costs are going to be a year out, but we're kind of working with Lance and his team and trying to figure out if we can do something to kind of mitigate some of the monsoons that we'll be experiencing without the new roof on there. Trying to figure out some options. So the last highlight that we'll do is the Hollywood Road. We did have this year's budget of the $1.5 million. We've added a little bit to that coming into this next year based on some of the costs and what we're figuring out. This one kind of ranks number 5 on our bids external. We're kind of in that late design phase and probably early construction. Bowman's the one that's kind of doing a lot of this design work for us right now. The water plans have been 100% completed. The sewer plans as well, 100% completed. You can see that the notifications, notice of intent, and the ADEQ has been completed. Some of the design reports. The one thing that we're working on right now is internally is the electrical. We have to do a pole relocation, so we're working with Dan and his team to shift those poles to the south. We do have partial orders out right now for parts and equipment. The one thing that's kind of becoming problematic is wood poles. We're probably 30 weeks out on some of the wood poles. So we're looking at alternative options there, seeing if we can get them sooner or quicker. Obviously calling around to see if anybody else has them. So that's kind of where we stand on at least getting some equipment. The last part of that design is the road section itself. Plans are about 90%, so that's kind of where Bowman's at with regards to some of their updates. With that, I'd stand for any questions you guys have on any projects or anything else related.
I think I did see on the El Paso Park, I thought I saw that 3rd backstop down in there that's laying up on the Mesa yard.
That's some pretty good eyes, Mr.
Yeah,
Lopez.
the 3rd one was installed or to be installed. No.
We can put it in there.
I just have a concern, it's probably not your department, whatever, but that's with our copper retrieval going on in town. There's a lot of areas that are still out there, like on the auxiliary arms. If you look at them, those orange arms that are on there, they've been there for months now. They don't seem to be moving fast enough to get that job done. And I'm concerned that they're out there, and when monsoon season hits, that's just an added thing that's gonna be detrimental to our system. Also, with them doing that construction, we don't have the capability to isolate different neighborhoods when we take outages. So I don't know what's taking them so long.
So Mayor and Councilmember Lopez, specifically, we meet with them on a monthly basis as far as their status and the update. Gila Valley Cutouts have this contract in place for almost 2 years now, and we're continuing to push them through that. We've had discussions with their owner specifically around timetables. They've had struggles over the last 6 to 8 months to keep a full crew as far as just having linemen available to them at that level. Because of the construction throughout the United States, it's really hard for them to keep those individuals at the rates that we've got them currently lined up at, and so they're working through that. Currently, we're focusing on the highway work. We asked them, we have that ADOT contract, or the ADOT permit, through the end of June, and so we asked them to focus on the highway and get that highway work completed while that is still viable, and then move back into the into the city, back into the inner workings of the city. But it was specifically around just making sure we had that permit available through ADOT and not having to redo that for another 6 months for them. So that's why it's kind of sat internal to the smaller neighborhoods, is why those pieces look like they haven't been moving, because we've had them focus that work on the highway itself.
Well, I hope they're working with our crews so that these jumpers they have open, you're just not gonna go put them back up just like that. So maybe they can come up with a plan working with us, because monsoons are gonna be here. Are they
Definitely,
gonna-
and when we have those on those single lines, there's obviously a weakness in the system. We don't have the viability to the entire system that we normally enjoy here at the city of Safford.
Well, maybe we can come up with a plan working with them to, if something goes out, what we can do, get some plans going.
For sure.
Thank you, sir.
Sounds good.
Any other questions we can answer for council tonight?
Anybody else have anything? Okay, we appreciate it. Going to bring us to item 16.1, our work session, disbursement of the city funds to charitable and nonprofit organizations. Mr. Holschel.
So before Matthew begins, I just wanted to go kind of remind council that during the budget process, we had discussed putting additional funding into the budget for providing 501c3s with some opportunities to get that funding, and to put a process in place that would essentially standardize that process in a way that, you know, we can review it as part of the budget process. So the decision was to do essentially right now a pilot, so this is out of the normal rhythm. Hopefully each year we can make this part of the budget process, and we can have applications with the 501c3s flow into the budget process for review. We put together a process that I'm familiar with, and so tonight what I would like council to do is look at some of the parameters, the amount of money that can be lent, and also, you know, the complexity of the application. Is it too much? Is it too little? There are certain things that we're gonna have to request that deal with, you know, having an IRS number, and also having things like going through the ACC. So again, tonight's process is really to get feedback from council on the application process itself, to make sure that we're not making it too onerous while still making sure we have a process that we can enforce. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Holschel.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As John stated, this was passed through the budget at $50,000 last year, or for this fiscal year. This is a very similar program to what John has seen in the past. And so this is kind of a mirroring of that and kind of catered to Safford's needs. But during the budget process, you all decided to pass $50,000 for nonprofit and charitable organizations to solicit through an application process, City of Safford donations. The City of Safford does not currently have an application process for nonprofit and charitable organizations to apply for the use of city funds. Staff has created eligibility guidelines and an application to help process 501c organizations that will be applying for funding. Once applications have been received, a packet will be put together of all applications and presented to council in a work session. Council will then decide which organizations they feel they would like to see these funds awarded to. A final packet will be compiled based on council's decision and approved in a regular meeting. Again, this is a pilot program, and this would become part of the budget process moving forward. In your packet, you have two documents, the first being the guideline for disbursement of city funds to charitable or nonprofit organizations. In that, I did state that it was adopted by resolution. That is just where the tentative budget was adopted for the $50,000. I've laid out the eligibility and the application process, as well as how the funds are going to be distributed. As you see in the eligibility, the organizations applying for funds must be providing services or activities in Safford. And I'll briefly go over this. Anytime you guys have questions on these sections, If you think it's too much or you think you would like to see more in those sections, go ahead and chime in. This is a work session. They must be established for a minimum of 2 years, must be chartered or incorporated through the Arizona Corporation Commission, and must be a tax-exempt entity as determined by the Federal Internal Revenue Service.
Matthew,
Yes.
so they need to be established for 2 years. So how do brand new ones come on board that aren't established for 2 years, 1 year?
The idea behind having them established for 2 years is so that the monies that they are applying for would be to help support the community. It wouldn't be to get them up and going, in a sense. I believe also that some of these documents that I know that some of the documents that we're requiring them to have, they need to be established for at least a year before they can have those documents.
This is a pilot program.
This is a pilot program, yes.
Okay.
And we can adjust these. Again, I want to make sure we understand that if there are
Yeah, it's
concerns
pilot.
with those, again, the idea is to make sure that these 501c3s that we provide funding to are viable and it just doesn't disappear.
Okay, sir.
So in relation to his question, that third one down with the line, new program project support, does that need to be there, or is it?
It would be a new program that the 501c is offering.
Oh, okay.
So if they have like a new event or new programming that they want to add to what they currently do for the city.
organization can't be new.
Right, the organization, and this is up to council again, if you want to accept newer organizations, we can change that minimum of 2 years. That's what it is at now, it can be changed.
Yeah, so as he stated, it would be an existing organization, but they may be rolling out a new service, and that's where that would fit.
Well, I know that with, my first look at that was, I would hate to have to fill one of these out, and I would hate to have to grade them and make a decision based on them, because, I mean, if I were creating this, I'd cut a third out of it and throw it away. It's too long. But go ahead, sorry.
No, that's exactly what we're trying to do, and that's why we did this comprehensively. We figured it'd be easier for us to take more information and whittle it back than try to add to it. So if there are areas within here that you feel are overly onerous that we don't need, we can take them out. Again, it's gonna be your program, and my past experiences, some of the lengthiest conversations I had during a budget process were over these applications. So again, you define the level that makes you comfortable.
I think we have other monies in other pockets to deal with some of the other stuff, like with the chambers or what Jamie has, like, I don't know, the wedding thing we had on Main Street. It's not a 501(c)(3).
No, those
but
are
it's-
events, and now
yeah,
staff does
yeah.
the events
Okay.
internally, and then the chamber is actually a contract for services, so that, historically, we've put that in the donations area, but it's not a donation. You're engaging in a contract, so we moved that in '24 out of the donation area, because you're basically paying them for services rendered. This is strictly for a 501c of some capacity, usually 501c3, and you're providing them with basically a donation in support of the community for basically economic development purposes. They provide a service, but it's not a contractual obligation, it's just donation funds.
Yeah, because there's some things that take place that don't fall under this.
Correct, and those are separate.
Those are separate and
Yeah.
will be taken care of still.
Yes, yes. In fact, the one question that we will have to answer at some point is there are still those items that would be considered to be part of this, and we can still leave them separate and say, okay, any of those entities that we funded in that way, we can leave in. So for example, we put monies in there for things like even recreation, which I guess wouldn't necessarily apply. But there will be some areas where, for example, the Boys and Girls Club, where we pay a lease on the equipment. You may choose to just leave that in there, or you may choose to have them apply and be part of that list. You're still going to be deciding, so you could always decide to keep them in there. So again, those are some of the nuances. So for now, anything that's in the budget this year remains, and then we do the pilot, and as we come back around next budget cycle, we can decide on, there are some items that are donations still, that you can either decide to leave and grandfather and leave them alone, or you can roll them into this program. But in the end, you'll still be making the decisions anyway.
Because I know we've talked before, because we want to have a time window for these applications. So during the year or whatever, we're not blindsided by different things that come on. That's where this is going to apply?
Yes. So for this year, because it's a pilot, once we get an approved process, once we get it, if we decide, yeah, 5,000 is good, or we want to leave it open, whatever, once we get the application, we float it, we see what we get. When we come back around next year, this will be part of the budget process. So the applications will be timed so that you will get the return of those applications and decide during the budget cycle which ones you're going to pick and which ones you aren't.
And then also to your point, Steve, we might go through this and you might decide that this is a good fit for what you guys want in length, and we might not get any applications, and that's when we decide, you know, this could be too extreme for some of the organizations in the valley to apply. And you might get feedback from the community saying, hey, we didn't like this part that you were asking, or do we have to really do this part? And that's when we would come back and look at this document and see what we could peel back on.
I just remember looking through there and thinking, I want to tell them all this information about myself.
So again, I mean, we could shoot for a one-pager, you know, 1 page of application with 1 page of guidelines, so you're only filling out a page. I mean, we have to have the IRS information. They need to have gone through the ACC. I'm assuming you would want to know the service group within the city. You would want to know if they're serving a population, what that program is, and what the funds would be expended on. I would think that these would be basic request of council in terms of you want to make sure that the population served is within your boundaries, I would assume. Because some organizations will do inside and outside the city, so I think you will want to say that there has to be a target population in the city that they
Well,
would
that
serve.
looks like it says what's your target, and then what's your, you know, your citizenry. I mean, it splits them apart.
Again, too, this could be the application, but applicants don't have to fill out the full application, and we'll bring them to you still, and you can say, okay, based on their transmittal letter, based on what they filled out, we think that this still is a good way for us to grant city funds to this 501c. So they could look at it and say, oh, I don't want to fill this out, and we would still bring it through the process of a work session. Council would look at it and they would decide, okay, we still think that this organization deserves what they're asking in grant funds.
You know, I thought, some of those questions, I thought, how am I gonna know that? But looking back now, if they've had to do 2 years of it, they do know. But if it's a new program that they haven't done, they may have no idea how many people are gonna show up. So, I don't know if that's, but like you said, they either fill it out or they don't, we go from there.
And we can simplify it. And again, the main thing is that you understand what you're deciding on, like where those funds are going. We're not going to do, I know in a past life, there was even a level of, you know, if you hit a certain threshold of funding that, you know, they would come in and you would actually look at their books and stuff. I'm not advocating we go to that length. I think we all know a lot of the organizations in town, the services rendered, so we would just ask for some level of a description of the program, the target population to be served, and again, we can streamline that back a little bit, and they should be able to provide that information.
So we've talked about a couple things in the application process, so I'll just touch on some of them as well. One of the things was a transmittal letter, and that's basically a letter from the organization saying, you know, what described their organization, what are their goals, what are the benefits they offer, the amount of funding that they're requesting, the purpose for what they're going to use the donation, a statement of their current fundraising activities, and then a statement signed by the principal officer acknowledging the membership or participation is open to all residents and businesses in the city. I've also put in there a budget detailing how the funds will be used. I think that's something that you might say maybe we don't need that. A copy of the IRS tax exemption certificate. If they're a 501c, I think that that's pretty easy for them to obtain. an up-to-date listing of names of the principal officers and the board of directors, and then a copy of the organization's most recent financial report. So those 5 things are what they would submit along with the application. And then, as I stated in the CCF, approved funds will be dispersed after receipt and review of applications. I put up to $5,000 per fiscal year will be awarded per applicant. And then disbursement of funds will be decided by a Safford City Council majority vote after first a work session where the applicants would be vetted by council, and then a regular meeting in which council would vote and decide on the disbursement of funds. And the application mirrors kind of what is in the eligibility guidelines.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we start with the application page, section 1. Are there particular items within section 1? And again, I think you would want to have organization name, mailing address, and so on. We need to know if they're a 501c of some type.
John, the thing is, I understand what Councilman McGoy is saying about keeping it simple. I get that, but at the same time, this is taxpayers' money. And you've got to have some documentation of why we are spending taxpayers' money and the good of the cause and what is it doing. So I understand that. I think that sometimes applying for, city funds, I think that paperwork could be a little bit longer than just keeping it simple kind of a thing. I want a simple form to fill out to be able to have an event on the city lawn, but when you're spending taxpayers' money, I think that needs to be really looked into. I think there's gotta be a benefit. What is the benefit and all that? So, I mean, I don't know how long you guys have taken on a search on this and stuff, but I do wanna cautious us from cutting that down too far, because you've gotta explain why you're spending that kind of money. That's just my 2 cents, so.
Mayor, I agree, and I think most 501Cs, especially that have been around a couple of years, they have
know.
all that information pretty readily available for all the grant writing that they do and all the applications to ACF and all the different, yeah.
I agree on that too.
So I think that, staff feels really comfortable about that. I think, being it's a pilot program, I hate for you guys to start cutting it just to satisfy us 7 guys up here that want to keep everything simple.
Well, again, I think there's some basic things like the IRS determination letters, ACC, but we'll see if we can't clean up some of the options. And, it could be as easy as saying, provide a brief description of the intended use of the funds, as opposed to giving checks. And then, you give them the option to describe and the target population, they want to look at, that kind of thing. So I think there's a way for us to balance those two things out. Again, this is our first bite at the apple, right? And again, that's the whole point of this, is to try to figure out how do we balance out, on the one hand, providing the opportunity for 501c3s to apply, right? And on the other hand, not to make it so onerous that we deter people that may want, so, because some of them are relatively small, may not be as sophisticated, but they should have some of the basic information. So I think we can kind of streamline this a little bit and make sure we keep those things that are required, and we'll bring it back. Is this something that we can kind of put together, go for? Because the plan basically is, take the application, we announce the program, we leave it out there for about a month, take all the applications in, we compile the responses, we bring you a packet, probably do it again in a work session environment, and then you guys make a decision as to what you want to fund, and then we bring it back for an adoption.
Like that.
And then also just want to make sure that council's okay with that 5,000 per applicant, or if they wanted to change that number. Maximum of 5,000 per applicant per year, fiscal year.
That's fine. Does that pretty much fit in with what's been happening?
So the thought is, we have $50,000 budgeted for this year. That would, if everyone applied maximum, that would be 10 applicants.
Well, how does that fit in when the mayor says, you should ask for more?
But I voted against
We're
it.
just gonna tell them no after they ask for more?
But I
Start
voted
it,
against
have a
it,
different
so go figure
501c
that one
apply.
out. It's the chemo pills, okay, Councilman McGuire? Jack me all up.
Give me some.
Well, and honestly, as we move forward, once we get beyond the pilot, there may be instances where the funding levels, even at the Boys and Girls Club, exceed the 5,000. So we could say, you know, that we leave it open to council discretion as to what you fund. And again, that was my experience in the past is, you know, you kind of would have an amount of money and you would distribute accordingly. It doesn't handcuff you. There may be larger organizations that serve larger populations where the 5,000 really doesn't amount to much for them, and maybe you want to make a larger donation. So again, there's different ways to do this. It all depends on what you want to do. You know, and you do have to think somewhat about existing funding streams for existing 501c3s and how would they, if we dovetail them as we go into the next budget cycle, how do we continue to fund them at that level if that's what we would like to do?
Well, I just don't wanna hamstring some of the, I don't wanna call them lesser, but less experienced groups that possibly need the funding more, but don't have the grant writer or whatever to look good on paper. And we cut it off at 10 and we had 15 or 20 and we, you know,
But the 5 is a maximum, so if somebody applies
Yes.
for 5, we could
So we don't
grant
have to.
3 if,
we
Correct,
don't have to
yeah.
do 10 at 5.
right, we can do
We
20
can
at,
do 20 at 2.5.
yeah.
Exactly. So if you happen to get 20, 25 applicants, all of them are asking 5, you can say, well, we want to make sure that we think all of these are great applicants. Then you can split it evenly between all of them, or
I'm okay with that.
if some are wanting bigger events, things that you think would need more funding versus others wanting, you know, whatever they would need for their 501c.
So would you like a cap for now, or do you want to open it up and just leave it to council's discretion as you see the applications and what's being applied for? That's why having their budget is useful, right? Because then it's relative. If I have a $500,000 budget, 5,000 probably doesn't mean a lot. If I have a $50,000 budget, maybe it does. And who knows, maybe if they have a $500,000 budget, you figure, well, what do they need our money for? But again, it gives you the flexibility to decide.
I think it's a good start.
At 5,000.
Yes.
Is that? All right, we can start there. And again, as we go into the next budget cycle, we can alter the limits and we can, you know, see how the pilot works, see what kind of response we get and make any adjustments we need to moving forward.
We've already decided on some of them.
Yes.
So if they just came from 2,500 last year, they figure they'd come 5,000 this year, that ought to filter it out a little bit.
Yeah, well, again, you never give up your ability to make a decision as to the level of funding.
It's a pilot.
It is, so I think the consensus I'm hearing is let's leave it at 5 for now, and again, we'll see how it goes. As we get into the next budget cycle, we can maybe raise that limit or take it off, and then council can just make decisions as they move forward based on the needs that we have. Because, again, some of the needs we currently have would exceed that amount, so. So we're gonna go back, we're gonna simplify, keep what we need, and then still require that they describe to some level what is it that they're doing. Maybe we do more of a description than having to go down the line and decide on all these categories. So we'll try to keep the heart of it in place, but we'll try to streamline it a little bit for you.
Don't simplify too much. I'm the only one that wanted it.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and close our work session and reconvene to executive session. Do we need a,
Yeah, I'm gonna move that we,
Motion for
Okay.
executive.
motion that we,
we have a motion to go into executive session?
Second.
And second, all those in favor? All right. Any opposed? Passes.
said bees can handle it.
Okay, we're back in regular session.
Vice Mayor, make the motion, we adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Let's go.